Hello, my name's Nick, and I thought it might be fun in the lead up to the Rise of Skywalker being released to watch, and well, I was going to watch them anyway, but watch and review all the Star Wars movies. I mean, the theatrical movies. I won't be doing the Ewok Adventures or Star Tours or the Holiday Special. If you want to watch a review of the Holiday Special, I can't do better than Red Letter Media. No one can. So, I just watched episode 1, and I don't want to go too in-depth, there's other reviews for that. I just want to present my perspective. I grew up with the original trilogy, and I went through the 17 years of, no Star Wars movies, and then we heard there was going to be a new one. And it is impossible to overstate the hype this movie had. Star Wars was the benchmark of quality in movie-going. It was, on everyone's list of favorite movies. It was already a movement when there was only 3 of them. Merchandise, games, books, comics, and the like. Mark Hamill said for him, Star Wars never really went away, and that's true. Mark did the voice of Luke Skywalker for years and years after the movies were done, in several games and so on. But the hype train was insane. 1999, episode 1, go watch the trailer and see what we were expecting. And I loved it. I went and saw episode 1 6 times the first week or the first month that it came out in the theater. Because there's so much more good than bad. Now, it's gotten a bad reputation now because many more Star Wars movies have come out. But I still love this movie. I sit down and watch it. I don't dread watching episode 1 to start the cycle. I don't sit and watch one Star Wars. I watch all of them. And I have a lot more positives than negatives. Positives, Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon is one of my favorite Jedi in all the Star Wars movies. He is, it was so cool to see the Jedi in full force with their full power set. We'd only seen Luke, who had, a little bit of training. We'd seen Vader, who was a man in a robotic suit. We'd seen Ben as an old man. We had never seen a Jedi who could move and fight like this at speed. George Lucas insisted that the Luke and Vader and that Hamill and I forget who's in the suit in the original trilogy, but Mark Hamill especially, he insisted that lightsabers were heavy. You had to use 2 hands on them at all times. And Mark Hamill always wanted to go to a one-handed style because you could do a lot more with the choreography that way. But George was like, no, these are very heavy things. And so when you see the episode 1 Jedi swinging them very fast, realize they're still very heavy. George Lucas is aware of the universe he set up. They're just that much better at moving them using the Force to help swing them faster. This is never made explicit in the film, but it's there if you want to do the math. It's the only way it could work. So, Qui-Gon is also the quintessential, mental Jedi. He doesn't always go with the will of the Council. He's very self-directed, self-defined, but he's still very good. The Council usually comes to his way of thinking on things when there's been a disagreement, as is the case with his choice of Anakin becoming a Jedi. Though it unfortunately takes his death to do so. So, Qui-Gon, I think, is the star and focus of the film. He's really the main quest person, though we have a lot of great characters. Obi-Wan, I love young Obi-Wan. Ewan McGregor is a fantastic actor, and Star Wars really boosted his career into the stratosphere. He was already a pretty big star at that point, but Star Wars it catapulted him to a new level of stardom. And he doesn't get a lot to do in this first movie, but he's there as a faithful apprentice, and he has a great reaction when Qui-Gon dies. Other great things, people will complain about the CG in this movie, that there's so much of it, and really just the establishing shots, all the space scenes, and when you're going down to planets. They built a ton of real sets for this movie. And you can tell when watching it, because it's 1999 CGI, you will obviously know what CGI. The creatures don't look that great by today's standards, but they hold up well enough. I mean, I would personally rather have a rubber suit monster. I don't know how you younger people feel about substandard CGI as compared to rubber suits. Either way, it's not real, but I prefer to have something was on set, like Jabba in Return of the Jedi. It's not real, but he's really there. So there's tons of great props, and the costumes they made for this. There was so much pre-production work on this movie. He put 3 years of work into each one of the prequels before any filming really started, or at least 2 years. So also, yeah, the costumes, the effects are great. Any of the blaster shots and the lightsabers, and there are so many great effects. You know, the underwater scenes come off really well. Basically, the worst kind of CGI in the movie, and this is a relative term, worst, is when you have a CGI character like Jar Jar intermixed with a real set or a real environment. Then it becomes really obvious that it is CG. But when you have something that's entirely CG, like the space battles, then it really works very well, I think. Um, the new force power the Jedi display. We had never seen force speed in the movies. We'd seen a little bit of force jump, but this extends the power of force jump. These are properties and abilities that had been in the games for a while. So Lucas took what he wanted from the expanded universe and worked it into the films. And it's just great seeing Jedi at their full power, which we had never seen before. The pacing of the movie is not the best. I think that the first act, the first third of the movie, when you're jumping from the ship where the Jedi arrive and fight the droids, and then you go down to Naboo, and then we escape Naboo. You know, we go from the Gungan city to the Theed Palace. I think that all works really well. You're never in any one place for too long. It's once we get to Tatooine, the movie just slows to a crawl. And you get, you know, if you haven't seen the movies, if you are watching this as a review going into it, get ready to be on Tatooine for a while, because you will be. I remember when I went to see it over and over, this is when I would go and get popcorn or a soda and just kind of check out for a while until the pod race happens, because there's going to be a lot of, well, it's good character work. You know, this is some of Qui-Gon's best scenes, or his scenes with Watto, who I think is a fine character. But this is a good time to mention another negative, the racial stereotypes. It's undeniable that they're there. The Neimoidians, the Trade Federation people sound vaguely Asian. The Gungans sound vaguely Jamaican. And you can do one of two things approaching this. You can say George Lucas is an old white man and he simply doesn't know any better, which is a completely valid opinion, or you can say that he's trying to ape the Republic serials, which their Star Wars movies are based on, and would have villains like Fu Manchu and much more offensive racial stereotypes. I don't feel any one of them are particularly offensive, and I really think he did it more to kind of give us a point of connection to these different alien species, but also make them different from us white Americans. Because Star Wars is a white American franchise, that's where it's from, that's who most of the Empire and most of the Rebels end up being white American people. And giving them these other foreign cultures, you know, when we make an alien, we have to give it something of Earth, like something we can connect to. We can't just make a blob of jelly and expect you to call it a character. So I think it doesn't detract too much from the movie's enjoyment, but it can be seen as problematic. I would have no problem with someone saying, you know, that can be offensive. The Gungans are a little on the dumb side, but they also really come through in the fight scene at the end, you know. And I think that's an important thing between the Gungans and the Naboo. The Gungans feel that the Naboo look down on them because of their lower intelligence level, and perhaps the fact they're a more warrior society, but they built that whole underwater city. They built these fantastic transports. They're by no means a lesser civilization just because they don't appear to have space travel. You know, they're not like a tribal society. I mean, maybe they are, but you know what I mean. They don't live in the woods with just huts and sticks. Nothing against people who do, of course. The pod race scene is fantastic. It really picks up the Tatooine slow down pace, and it's not that long. You're stuck there. Once they get the ship, they're off to Coruscant, and The Simpsons especially made fun of there being too much politics in the movie. There really isn't. There's one scene in the Galactic Senate and one scene with the Jedi Council, and then we're done with Coruscant and we're into the climax. And I think it has one of the strongest climaxes in all of the Star Wars movies. Before I get to that, yes, Jar Jar is pretty bad. His comedy is very lowbrow, and it does detract from my enjoyment, but there's maybe 5 minutes of screen time where he's doing something stupid for comedic effect. And his stupidity actually pays off in the end battle scene where he accidentally does things that benefit the heroes, you know, in battle. Some of the Anakin scenes are a little cringy. I think mostly he turns in a pretty good performance for a kid his age. Child actors, you're always going to get a so-so, grab bag of performance, whether it's quality or not. But I think he does a pretty good job. He doesn't deserve half the hate that he got being bullied for so long. And I think it's mostly the movie was overhyped. There was no way anything could live up to the hype that this movie had upon its release. So, the cultural perception on episode 1 has shifted a lot over the years. People loved it when it came out. Then about 6 months after, people started to have a more negative view of it. And then as the other prequels came out, it got worse and worse by comparison. And then 5 or 10 years after that, you start seeing internet articles pop up saying, well, are the prequels really that bad? Look at all the things they gave us. And, it's for you to decide when you watch it how you feel about it. Just try to drop any preconceived notions at the door and try to take the movie as it presents itself at face value. The Duel of the Fates is one of the best pieces of music in the entire Star Wars music library, which is a pretty good music library. It's such a great theme, and such a great Jedi fight. The climax of the film, I feel, makes up for all its flaws. It's this massive 4-part climax. You've got the Jedi fight with Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. You got the Queen making her incursion into the palace to kidnap the Viceroy. You got the Gungans fighting the droids, which shows us how massive land battles are fought in the Star Wars universe. And you got the space battle with the Naboo starfighters attacking the droid control ship. And you could say what you want about George Lucas's ability to frame shots, which I think is a limitation of the technology he was using. You can complain about his ability to direct actors because he hadn't directed a movie in 20 years. I've never seen Natalie Portman turn in such a wooden performance in anything else, so I lay that at the feet of George Lucas, no question. But the man knows how to edit, or at least how to hire the right editor. This climax is so well edited. There's 4 things going on, and yet you never get confused at what's going on when. You never, feel like, oh, well, maybe we should be seeing this instead. You're so into all 4 different parts of it. There's a great scene where, and it's very organic. You'll see Anakin, his ship gets shot, and he flies into the droid control thing, and it skids to a stop, and then we'll cut to the Jedi. Every little chunk of the climax hits a natural stopping point. You're never cutting away from intense action. I think it's an important point that the Queen's plan to kidnap the Viceroy works, and she manages to get him before Anakin takes out the droid control ship, so it's not dependent on him, saving her by shutting down the droids. Her plan would have worked anyway. This is Leia's mother. We want to establish her as a strong female role model, and this gives her a lot of agency. That her plan would have worked whether or not Anakin was able to take out the droid ship, which was kind of accidental. This is when he delivers his, "Now this is pod racing" line, flying out of the droid ship as it explodes, and in context, it's fine. There's really nothing wrong with it. It's just when you take it out of context that it seems kind of silly. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. I mean, it's the best Jedi fight that it can be argued that it's the best Jedi fight in the whole thing. I would say, my favorite is the Anakin and Obi-Wan fight from Episode 3, which has the most lightsaber fighting out of any of them. That's always been my favorite personal part of Star Wars, is the lightsaber combat. But we were blown away by this. This is why I kept going back 6 times to see it, was just for the climax and just for that lightsaber fight and the pod racing scene. There's a lot more good than bad in Episode 1. But this is getting about to the length I wanted it to be, and hope you all come back to see a review of Episode 2. I hope to have all these done by the time the Rise of Skywalker comes out, and I'll go more in depth in that one. So, thank you for watching, and thank you for your time.